Welcome to Beyond the Mat, where we dive into the reasons why people start training Jiu-Jitsu, and we want to see how that intersects with people's real life. Today, I am so proud to announce that I have two of my friends, Mina Burnside, black belt at Gracie Baja, two-time ambassador, and we have Ari Gray, assistant instructor at Gracie Baja, and she is a purple belt. So I want to congratulate you both. I know you just got your purple belt within the calendar year, so congratulations on that. And somebody just earned their black belt.
Yes, back in February.
February, okay. How did that feel? Did that feel like a weight, or did that feel like a real accomplishment, considering everything it took in between to get that black belt?
I would say more of an accomplishment. Like, it was weird because it felt like a weight was off the shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Brown belt, I feel like, was a really weird belt because you're expected to be at the level of a black belt, but like you can make a couple mistakes. But then when, at least for me, this is how my experience was. Like, when I got my black belt, I remembered thinking of how I saw black belts when I was a white belt, of like, oh man, these guys know everything. Like, they have a deep understanding of the game. And then I, like, as it was getting tighter on my waist, I'm having these flashbacks of like all the guards I'm really bad at still, and like all of the stuff that I need to study more. And then I realized, like, wow, okay, maybe my perception, hopefully, as when I was a white belt, was off a little bit. And hopefully this is a normal way to feel. But it's cool too, because the weight off the shoulders is now, like, I don't know what it is, but if there's like, if I get swept by someone who's a lower belt or anything, it would bother me a lot as a brown belt. But now as a black belt, I just think, I got my black belt. You can have your 2 points. I'm going to get it back, but
Yep.
I got my black belt. What are you going to do?
Yep. You know, there's significance of why I wanted you two to be here on the first ever episode. Ari was my first coach, and you were the first female that I rode with.
That was at Arcadia, right?
That was at Arcadia.
That's
and the
right.
story about that is everyone was out competing. Was it Pan Am's?
I think, because I remember I told Zuza, I was like, I rolled with one of your boys. And he goes, Travis? And I was like, yeah, man. He goes, yeah, he's very strong.
You know, the thing about that is when we started and I somehow got top control and you said, you've been over there training with Zeus, I'm like, oh shit, this is going to be a long 5 minutes. A long 5 minutes. I'm like, and you didn't let me pass. You didn't let me do shit.
Really?
You didn't let me do anything.
I remember just thinking, like, if he passes, it's done. So for whatever reason, I was like, God, anyone out there, please just give me something to hold.
That was fun. And I was so glad that Ryan was there too, because he took some of the heat off me. I got a chance to get beat up by him practicing his fireman throws.
Oh, yeah.
And Ari, she was my first coach. I can remember canceling my membership at Planet Fitness, and I'm looking around, what can I do to be active? And I looked over there and I seen Gracie Baja. Let me go over there and get some information. And I'm thinking, you know, Professor Zeus is right there by the door. Ari, I believe you were at the desk. And I walked in like, I got this. I got this. How wrong I was.
Yeah.
How wrong I was. You know, and my train of thought, which is the brainchild behind this podcast, is that I don't believe anyone just gets up in the morning and say, I want to go train jiu-jitsu. And if they do, it's usually, you know, 1 training session, 2 training sessions, then they're gone. Mm-hmm. So I find it very interesting that so many people have so many different stories of why they started jiu-jitsu, and then how it translates into their life and their well-being and mental health and all of that. Mm-hmm. Mina, you started in 2018?
No, I moved out here in 2018. I started back in 2013.
2013.
Yeah, so this is my 10th year.
What was the motivating factor for you to train such a brutal sport?
Man, so I always thought, like, martial arts were so cool when I was a kid. I loved all the fighting movies, superhero movies and everything. But when we lived in Ohio, we didn't really have the money to have a start. And then same in Tennessee. until I was a little bit older. So I was biking around town one day, and I lived about 2 miles away from Gracie Baja School. And I was like, I just remember seeing like inside the window and then going home, Googling what jiu-jitsu was. At the time, I had to choose, because I did a couple free classes at like a Taekwondo school too. And I didn't know which one to do, because the jiu-jitsu school had a free class on Fridays for high schoolers. And the deciding factor, I still, like, I want to go back in time and punch myself in the face for ever thinking about taking Taekwondo over Jiu-Jitsu. Nothing against the Taekwondo black belts, of course, but the brutality of Jiu-Jitsu is just so much more fun.
Yes.
But I remember going online on YouTube and typing in Taekwondo versus BJJ. And I was like, oh, well, that was fast. And then, like, karate versus BJJ. Same result for every video. It gets to the ground and it's over.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I want to learn that one then.
Yeah.
And then it was after that, the free Friday classes started because the school was right across from Centennial High School. Centennial High School had a pretty big wrestling program at the time. I don't know if they still do, but at the time they had a lot of wrestlers coming in. They were not happy that a girl had joined their class, but it was free. And I was like, what are you going to do about it? So as the weeks went by, like, it would dwindle off to where it was just me and then Coach Felix, who was a blue belt at the time. And so it would be like getting a private lesson until they canceled the class entirely.
Yeah.
Because I remember thinking, like, after the first one, I knew they were saying, like, she won't be back. And I'm a very, very, very big, I get motivated very well by spite. Mm-hmm. And so I always joke, like, 80% of my black belt was spite from them saying I wouldn't be back. And then 20% was the love.
It's definitely love.
Yeah.
Ari, what made you decide that you wanted to do train jiu-jitsu?
So I actually was kind of like forced into it. Like, my husband had started training a few months before me, and he kept saying, oh, like, you need to come try this. You need to come do this. It's so amazing. And I've always done like single person sports. So, like, I did track and field for 7 years. I did powerlifting, Olympic lifting, no contact at all. And like watching a couple of his classes, I'm like, I do not want to put on some fancy pajamas and go roll around with a bunch of sweaty men. Like, what? But that's what it is, though.
Yep.
And then one night, I've worked in restaurants for almost a decade. One of the line guys followed me to my car. He chased me to my car. And like, thank God I made it all the way there. But like, what if I hadn't? What if I hadn't gotten to my car? And he's like, hey, it's great for self-defense. Just come try one class. It's like, fine. I go to the class. I learned the guillotine choke and the self-defense. And I was like, oh, I like this. And then we learned, like, oh, you can fight from your back. And it's not a bad position. Like, it's a great position to be in. I was like, oh, it's kind of fun. And I was lucky enough that I had Ryan as a training partner my first class. Like, I think that was definitely, when it comes to like women starting training, like, I got to train with him, so I was already comfortable. Mm-hmm. But then, I want to do a class without him to make sure, like, okay, it's not just because I'm training with my husband that I actually want to be here. So I did another class without him, and I was like, oh, this choke's still fun. I like breaking arms. This is going to be a good time. And so, got into it for self-defense, but now the sport is all I think about. So,
speaking of the sport, you're an absolute monster in competing. Absolute monster.
Try to be.
No, I think it's great because you're not afraid to get out there and do what a lot of people won't do. I mean, even when you come up short sometimes, you still have a smile on your face and you have it already in your mind that I need to work on this, even before you leave. Where does that come from, that competitive edge that you have?
So I've always done sports. Like I said, I did track for 7 years. I started when I was 14 in high school. And I got to the point where I was actually training to join the U.S. Olympic team. I got pregnant, so that kind of got sidetracked. But then Ryan, right afterwards, like, I could lift while I was pregnant. So he's like, hey, come do a powerlifting meet with me. So I got into powerlifting right away. I dabbled in CrossFit actually a little bit, and I joined an Olympic lifting team. I never competed in it, but I've always liked pushing myself a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And so it just kind of translated into that. Like, I mean, even in school too, I was always like that dorky AP honors kid. Like, I was always pushing myself in every aspect. And so like in jiu-jitsu, it's, especially as a woman too, like, I go into any class, I maybe have a partner that's another woman, let alone another guy, like close-ish to my size. And so it's kind of the spite thing too is like I kind of want to prove like, yeah, I may be, 50 pounds lighter than the next guy, but I'm gonna kick your butt and you're gonna be like, oh, okay, wait, I can get beat up by a girl. And like I like that, just little like, okay, yeah,
You
handle myself.
You are an absolute monster.
Well,
I've
thank
seen you compete twice. The last one, I think, was it Professor May?
Yes.
Yes. Do you generally get ready and get geared up when we have our CompNet tournaments or any tournaments? Do you find yourself wanting to compete in those?
Yeah, so when I first moved out here, I think I did close to 20 different between super fights and tournaments in the span of a year. And then when COVID hit, it kind of like, it really threw me off my game. So I took a long break from competing for a while. So this year, my plan is to do at least one IBJJF to get back into it this year and then start getting back into it more next year. But I took a long break. But yeah, like when I see the tournaments, and I'm excited for the one coming up because I do feel that fire again finally. But
So
yeah.
you are competing in
In this one, no, because the only person I have is Professor Maeve, and she's still recovering.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
hopefully by the time the next one is, we can go again.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I'd love to do more like IBJJF ones that have a bigger pool of people as well.
Yeah. Both of you guys are smiling every time you get off of the mat. It takes me a few minutes to kind of bring myself back because of the adrenaline. Of course, I'm fighting big guys, so that takes a lot. And I'm just mentally exhausted when I come off the mat, but you guys just walk off like it's nothing, and you're smiling. What would be the difference between me and you guys?
Sparring, especially when you're newer, you still get that big adrenaline dump, and learning how to kind of like manage the adrenaline over like a period of time, knowing that like, like when it came to track, it's not just like, a 60-second race. You're going to be in there for 5 or 6 minutes,
Yeah.
and there's someone else like messing with you. You're not just by
Yeah.
yourself. So I think kind of just taking that time and slowing yourself down. Like, so now even when I prep for competition, like my playlist is all chill music. Like I'm sitting there
Really?
like trying, yeah, it's all like Noah Kahan and Ed Sheeran and like just like chill music. I know it's weird, right? But it's like super chill music, and I even have a video of me like dancing around before a competition just to like chill myself out, because I know if I let that adrenaline dump happen, I'm going to do something stupid. I'm either going to hurt myself or my partner. And so like getting myself into that, like, okay, I'm going to hang out. And I kind of do the same thing with rolling too, is I'm always going to chill out first. I'm never going to play that angry lifting music that, that I would normally do.
That's what I was about to say, because I'm straight up Tupac when I'm ready to go and compete and to train for that matter. I think it's just to gear me up. The chill music, I think it would put me in a different mindset to go and train and roll. But that's interesting. Maybe I'll try that the next time I compete.
Well, there's the two versions. You have like your California Love, which is awesome. And then you have the Hit 'em Up, which you're like, all right, I'm going to rip someone apart.
That's where I'm at.
That's it. Yeah, you're right.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. We talk about you guys competing. Now I want to talk about GBF. GBF has been so successful to this point. What do you guys think about that? About the progress of GBF?
It made more progress than I thought it was going to. I wasn't sure if it was going to be a kind of a hit or a miss. I do like, especially that it gives women a safe space to train. Because like I said, as a woman going into jiu-jitsu, like if I were to walk in and I didn't know Ryan and he was my training partner, like he's a 200-pound guy, I'd be like, oh God, I don't know if I want to come back to this. But now it's like giving women that safe space, guaranteeing, hey, I have someone my size to train with, and not just like, man, if I were to step brand new onto the mat and roll with you, I don't know if I will admit I'd be a little terrified. I don't know if I'd want to come back. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, if I was like a brand new person, like
Yeah.
I know you now and we roll and it's great, but like if I were to, brand new step onto the mat and be like, oh, you want me to fight him and he's been training for like a couple years, what? I don't know about that. So
Yeah, neither one of you guys are intimidated by me. I can say that right now. Neither one of you guys. But what about the popularity in jiu-jitsu for the female now. Have you guys seen that growing?
For sure.
Yes. So 10 years ago, and this was down south with the good old country boys, where it's like they had that country strength of like if they grew up on the farm, if they were throwing hay bales around. And for my first year, I was the only woman who trained at that school. And now you go to, I think, any jiu-jitsu school anywhere, you'll see at least 3 or 4 sprinkled in the classes. And then there's schools that have a full women's program, a women's competition team. And that was, if you would have told me that 10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you. I'd have been like, no, that's not going to happen, it's amazing to see now.
Yeah, I think it's great as well, because the more we can be inclusive in everything that we do, I think we'll be better off as a society, as a community. I am refreshed to see so many women finally getting into it, because once you learn what you're doing and understand the reasons why you're doing it, I think the women or the females will understand the fun and the importance of self-defense and learning a new martial art.
And this is going to get the comment section going, but women's jiu-jitsu is 100 times more fun to watch than men's jiu-jitsu. Women's jiu-jitsu goes for submission. A lot of men's jiu-jitsu fights for points, and submissions are always more fun to watch.
Yeah.
Always.
I mean, that's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
I didn't learn about jiu-jitsu or start paying attention to jiu-jitsu until I seen John Jones fight.
Yeah.
I can remember where it was in a bar. Me and my friends, we were just sitting down watching TV, and he said, "Look at that guy right there, Bones Jones." And ever since then, he's been my favorite fighter. And then, I started learning about the martial art, and Joe Rogan and the other guys always talk about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
And, then 5 years later or 8 years later, I find myself in a jiu-jitsu school, which is pretty cool. Me starting when I was 46, and now I'll be 49 Saturday. I think it was probably the best move that I could have made, considering the way that I want to stay in shape and exercise and meet new people. So, Ari, tell me, what would be your next accomplishment in terms of competing on a bigger level?
Well, I think my next goal for competing, I kind of took this year off. I did a lot last year. And I was able to, I was ranked #1 in the world in my division as a blue belt. And CompNet is definitely a smaller tournament. It's definitely growing, but it was a smaller tournament. And I'm kind of glad that I achieved that first. And I think this next year I want to go for a different league. I'm thinking either Jiu-Jitsu World League or IBJJF, just something a little bit bigger, maybe not quite IBJJF, but I want to start, I want to hit that same goal of ranked #1 in the world or the national champion or anything like that, but with just a slightly larger scale, and just start growing and growing from there. Hopefully before I hit brown belt. But
you're going to go all in with competing in 2024 then, right?
Yeah, so I'll be competing probably twice a month at least,
okay.
every single month next year. So it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. But I'm really excited to get back into, I'm currently training for a powerlifting meet, and I'm excited about it. But now that I have to miss this CompNet, I'm like, I want to go again. I want to fight someone.
Yeah.
Mina, let's go. Let's fight. It'll be fun. I know I'm going to get killed, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I wish I could compete, because like I mentioned, Saturday is my birthday that day, and I wanted to compete, but we have this opportunity. We're going to take advantage of it.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you so
happy
much.
birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, it would be tough on Josh, my producer, to try to run all of that around. And me, spending an hour and a half away from him, getting ready to compete and all of that. So I'm just gonna take this opportunity for what it is to provide a good service to Gracie Baja, which I think is pretty cool. So, self-defense versus, I guess, being an athlete. And you actually brought this up, Ari. What would be the difference between the sport, jiu-jitsu, and self-defense?
When it comes to self-defense, never just sit down. because I am a butt scoot and guard puller, and I'm fully aware of that. And if I ever get into a self-defense situation, when I fight, I jump at people and and that's what I'm going to do. Versus self-defense, your goal is to get up and out or to get immediately into a position of control, such as like mount or side control or anything like that, or even just taking someone down. Man, like when you're not on the soft squishy mat and someone's head hits the cement, it's going to be a wildly different thing. So I think that would be the biggest thing, is that your stand-up has to change drastically. Like your goal should actually be to like create distance versus, like wanting to close a space immediately and either get to your guard or get to a takedown.
Yeah.
So,
Mina, how would you define the sport jiu-jitsu versus self-defense?
So there's something, I love teaching self-defense classes, especially like to women who've never done grappling before. It's one of my favorites to introduce them to the complexity of jiu-jitsu. And there's one thing I always say at the end there's a couple things actually, but one is rules. There's no rules when you're defending yourself. Go for the eyes, the nose, the fingers. Use what you know in jiu-jitsu and cause them as much pain as you can so you can get away. I always say, like, as much as it would be awesome to be like the Batman or the Batwoman and like beat the stuff out of someone, get away, because you don't know if they have a weapon. If you have a weapon and it's handled wrong, that's a weapon that could get into their hands. Like, just get out of it. But then another point I always try to hammer in too is for like preventative measures. I always tell them your safety is more important than someone's feelings. If someone is making you uncomfortable and you're, I don't want to make them feel embarrassed by being loud and saying like, get the hell away from me. And I say like, that doesn't matter. You will probably never see them again in your life. Yep. Your safety is more important than some man or woman's little feelings. So that's what I would say is like the rules, go for everything to get out versus, in sport jiu-jitsu, you can't break someone's fingers or, gouge their eyes. Thankfully.
You can't do that. Yeah. I look at me, and I don't know if you guys are like this as well, but the more and more I train jiu-jitsu and the more and more I learn just by training with someone, I could just see myself sizing people up in case anything happens. Do you guys ever get that feeling or do that?
Every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely been like a goal, not a goal, but I've enjoyed making men feel uncomfortable because I've had, unfortunately, the occasional thing where a guy will follow me in a grocery store and it's like I'll turn around and I'll like size him up a little bit, and now I'm that obnoxious person that I'll yell at him like, do you need something? Can I help you with something? And they usually walk away because they're like, why is she staring at me? Like whether it was intentional or not. Yeah. But so I definitely do that probably way too often. But it's, like Mina said, you're never going to see that person again. Yeah. And if I'm feeling uncomfortable, like I don't want the situation to progress to the point where maybe they did follow me out to my car and I had to deal. I would rather just not have to do that in the first place. So,
with me even being a police officer a long time ago, I feel more comfortable as I am right now, because I know that I can protect myself. I can get away if I have to. But with the police officer, you had one method that you could use, and you couldn't exceed a certain level of force unless it was coming back at you. But I see myself just sizing people up all the time. And it's I don't think it's just to be ready to fight. I just think if I get into a situation, where do I need to protect myself? And that is huge for me. Huge.
Honestly, jiu-jitsu trained versus somebody untrained, whether it's a woman trained versus a man untrained, it's not going to be like the end all be all, but it is giving yourself the closest thing to a superpower that you could have. And the longer you do it, the more likely you are to succeed if you need to escape,
Absolutely.
And it's amazing too. That's why I love it when like, bigger guys that, I heard this so often when I worked at a school, like, I was an athlete in college, so I think I can handle myself. And I'm like, sure, man, let's partner up. I'd love to work with you. And then they see, like, even though if you're way smaller, when the leverage is done right and the pressure is applied right, it doesn't matter how many home runs you hit in college 20 years ago.
Yep.
Like, you're done. You cannot.
I'm a witness.
Yeah.
I'm a witness. Yeah. So with that, do you take that into when you encourage women that are looking for an avenue to get self-defense or looking for something else to stay active and chose jiu-jitsu. Do you use those type of examples to help them understand?
Well, I think it depends on the person too. Like there's a couple different personality types that I've seen enter jiu-jitsu, male and female. There's some, like, I know you have this personality type, Professor May has it, I have it, where it's like you love that, the pain that comes with it. You love knowing, like, oh man, I got beat up today so bad, but there's going to be a day where I hand out the beatings. Not everybody feels that though, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with someone that wants to come in, train once or twice a week, just learn the self-defense basics and go home. So I think you have to know who you're talking to. Like, I am not going to talk to and encourage and if I'm rolling with someone, I'm not going to roll with someone who maybe is in their 50s and this is the first sport they've done in 40 years. Versus like bringing Professor May back on the mats, like, hey, let's go as hard as you can, like safely though. You can't do that with everybody. So it's finding, and that part just takes time. It's finding what motivates the person and finding what their why is, because maybe the person who's in their 40s or 50s just wants to move around and they want to feel safer and just more confident. So I'm not going to roll with them and try to get them ready for a tournament if their goal is to have confidence and feel safe walking home.
Okay.
So I think it's finding that part, that it really varies on how you want to push and encourage. Does that make sense?
It does. Ari, I see you working with a lot of the females that come in brand new, the ones that are already established into jiu-jitsu, and I could just watch you, and I see you being a mentor to a lot of the females that we have in GB in the Valley. What would be your encouraging, I guess, advice for them joining jiu-jitsu, either just for self-defense or just for the love of it?
I would say biggest thing is don't let the mat intimidate you. Because like I said, like, you know, there are starting to be more women on the mat, which is great, but it's still, you know, if you're just walking around like waiting for even like the kids competition class or, you know, a class like that, and you see like these 8-year-olds like armbarring each other, like it can be intimidating.
Yep.
And it's, you know, if you've never done anything like that or you don't have that like athletic drive, I would say just don't let it intimidate you and give it some time to not intimidate you. Because eventually it gets a lot easier. Eventually it gets to the point where like you throw flying arm bars and it's a fun time. It becomes more enjoyable once you can get past the like, oh, okay, like I actually belong here. There's a space for me, instead of like, oh, but there's all these like big guys on the mats like crushing each other. There's a space for you.
Do you guys ever feel like that you have to reassure or, you know, re-explain the whys of jiu-jitsu and how it will help to the females that female or male, because both of you guys are well established and looked to as leaders? Do you guys ever find that you have to reinforce or, I guess, remind people of why jiu-jitsu? Why should I stay? Why am I doing this?
Sometimes I know, you know, we always talk about how, you know, you should be humble on the mats. And so I think something that happens is like, yeah, you get those people that used to be athletes, or especially when you get a lot of wrestlers in the sport who have already done something very, very similar and already, you know, they do kind of have a step up, you know, especially compared to like if you get a brand new white belt who did wrestling for 4 years compared to like your average Joe, or even someone that just, you know, didn't do a contact sport like that. The ego can kind of get in the way. And I think we also, you know, I like to remind people like, hey, like, great, you're going to have those days where you're the hammer and you're crushing people. But then, you know, eventually you're going to get to a point where you're going to meet someone that just hammers you into the mat, and you need to not let your ego take a hit. You need to stay humble, and you need to think, okay, what did I do wrong? What can I do better next time? Versus like, oh man, that was awful. Like I just got totally destroyed. I don't know if I want to go back because I know, you know, Travis is going to beat me up again, or like, so I think that would be like the biggest thing that I like to remind people is like, ego stays off the mat. You're here to learn. You're here to be humble.
Egos have to stay off of the mat, because if you bring that onto the mat, you may be successful every now and then, but we see when we're training with people with that ego, and that's when I like to push the envelope a little bit, just to say, hey, you know, we're training partners. I had to do that with a couple people. Hey, let's work on the technique. We're going to have time at the end if you want to just get this smoke. But
Yeah,
Yeah, if you
for
want to
sure.
catch this smoke, good luck.
if you want to get this smoke. My why in joining jiu-jitsu, the world just went to shit during COVID. And I was looking for things to be active. So I joined Lifetime and Planet Fitness. For what? I don't know.
I was going to ask that. Why?
But the restrictions that they had going on, especially with the wearing of the mask and you can't touch this, you can't touch that, only a certain number of people can come in. I just felt something different about training jiu-jitsu. And my why, it was PTSD. Let me say it correctly, PTSD. So I was challenged with that. It didn't help with the world being shut down due to COVID. So I needed something to free my mind, to get me to a better place. What I use jiu-jitsu for now, I have at least 2.5 hours to myself, not thinking about anything but the people that are in front of me. So that's definitely one of the reasons why I started jiu-jitsu. It's helped me in my life. Can you guys share the why other than Ryan? Because I think people come from all different backgrounds. And I mentioned in the beginning, throughout the valley and other places, I've been able to meet a lot of people and understand that. Do you guys really have, outside of just wanting to train jiu-jitsu, was another reason why you guys wanted to train?
Like when I started, I had some demons I was fighting. I was really, really struggling with an eating disorder and depression. And what pulled me through that was the love of jiu-jitsu more than like how much I hated the way I looked at the time or anything. And it wasn't until I passed out at a friend's house from just not eating and training all the time that I realized, like, okay, I love jiu-jitsu. I need to figure this out. And it would slowly, like it took years, but slowly I understood, like, I need to fuel my body if I want to train the way I want to train. And that's what, like, it pulled me out of some of the worst times in my life. And that's why I also feel like, almost like I owe jiu-jitsu something, where it's my responsibility to, if I can give that to somebody who's at that same age, who's in that same boat. Like, I feel like if I can get one person to find jiu-jitsu the way I did, then black belt, no black belt, I did my part for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. And
I can keep pushing to find, more girls that age or even older maybe who are struggling with that, but just giving them that one like lifeline that like I had at the time.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting too, because looking back, there are so many tiny factors that had any of them been different, I would not have found jiu-jitsu the way I did. And I may have found it too late in life or too early in life and quit. So I'm a big believer in, like, if it's God, the universe, when things line up the way they should, there's a reason for it. So I hope that my reason is, like, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 30 years, there's somebody out there who needs that lifeline, and I can hopefully introduce them to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the things that I do. I never just come out and ask people their business or anything like that. But like I said, I've made some very good relationships in GB, and some of the same reasons other people started training. And we all feel comfortable with talking to each other about that. And that's just, this podcast was thought of like a year ago. And I wanted to see how I could tailor it to people that are obviously serious about training and understanding that why and what people were thinking when they started training jiu-jitsu. And I shoot my testimony everywhere. I'm not ashamed. And that's one of the things.
You make it, when you have depression and anxiety, like, you can't fake it. You're
faking.
screwed. For forcing myself to go to, like, on those really bad days, like, go to a class. Because whether or not, maybe I got something out of the class, at the very least, I gave another woman on the mat a training partner, or maybe I gave a detail that someone hadn't thought of before, or vice versa, or like maybe, I went to a different school and someone gave me a different detail for a technique that I'm like, oh, I never thought of it that way. And it just kind of adds that little confidence. And now it's to the point where it's like, just walking around in public, for example, I'm no longer the girl that kind of like has my headphones in, like head down or anything like that. I actually walk around with confidence. And
you too? I was telling Josh that. I mean, for the longest time, I couldn't make eye contact with people.
Yeah.
And now, shit, I'm looking.
Yeah. Make eye contact, stare them down,
you blink first.
Can I get that tattooed? Shit, I'm looking.
I am looking. It's just that confidence.
Yeah, for
just
sure.
That confidence.
Yeah, it's no longer faking it. It's like I can walk around and like I actually feel like, no matter how I look or how I'm feeling that day, I'm like,
try it, mofos.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, try it.
Yeah.
The athlete that you were before, Ari, cross country, and the track and field that you did before, what does that athlete compare to this athlete now?
It's a wildly different mindset between the two sports. That athlete then, I think was more just focused on like the big picture at the end of the tunnel or at the end of the track, like the finish line, versus this athlete now. I see the value in like the day-to-day grind. And there's also definitely a lot more like variance in jiu-jitsu because once again, I have to rely on a partner for what's going to happen during the roller, what's going to happen during training the techniques. And so I definitely think the athlete now is a lot more open-minded and more like less hard on myself for sure. Because like I said, like if I'm rolling with Mina, for the most part, I know that I stand no chance and that's fine. But I'm also going to take everything that Mina did to me and I'm going to be like, okay, what did I do wrong here? What can I do better? What can I do to make sure that Mina doesn't, do the same technique to me next time versus, the athlete that was doing track or doing powerlifting, I just saw the big goal at the finish line and there wasn't, too much variance in that. And I was definitely a little bit hard-headed, like, no, this is the way to get to that time that I need, that weight that I need lifted, anything like that. And now it's like, okay, I know that there's going to be different things that contribute to the end of the day.
That's perfect that you said that because one of the things that I wanted to speak to you about, Mina, is the attitude that people bring to the mat. What would be a good attitude in Professor Mina's mind for someone to come to the mat and train and be a good training partner for everyone else?
So I would say, is this like a regular fundamentals class or like a competition class?
You're the professor. Okay,
so I'll break down each one. Whenever I try to explain this, it always sounds crazy, but one of my friends, back when I was like lifting and training with him back in Franklin, when I asked him one time, I was like, we would lift together and he did this insanely like explosive workout and he just kept going. And I was like, man, how did you do that? And he said, I just pushed the FU button. And I was like, what? And he goes, there's that button in your brain where you push it and it's like nothing else matters. And then how I interpret that is like we're all mammals and I think we have an animal inside of us and you can tap into that animal. It's the cliche of like the two wolves, but I always find that kind of cringy. So I always think like find your inner animal and you use that for the competition class. It's a selfish animal. That animal is only thinking about you, your own progress, and like your own intensity. So that's why it's good to tap into it, but not live like the animal because you tap into that during the competition class. During the regular GB1 class, I want someone to come in, if it's a fundamentals class or even an advanced class, they come in to learn. They come in to make mistakes. They come in to try to just sharpen the details they have, ask questions if they need to. If someone's going ham in a GB1 class, they're in it for the wrong reason. If someone's going to GB1 classes or GB2 classes just to get a piece of hockey tape on their belt, they're in it for the wrong reason. But if they're going to truly learn what the art is and the details behind it and how it all works together, that's the attitude I would like personally.
What about you and your coaching, Ari?
I think I kind of agree with Mina too, is like, competition class, yeah, you do want to step it up a little bit more. It's no longer you're learning, you're making mistakes. It's like, no, it's time to go. It's time to put my A game to the test and see, what I need to tweak there, versus, going to the GB1, the fundamentals or anything like that. You need to be more like open to work on yourself. Because, you're there to improve yourself at the end of the day. Like I noticed, like I'm a huge introvert. I hate talking to people in public in general.
I know.
But, like, jiu-jitsu people, there's the commonality that everyone there for the most part is there to improve some part of themselves, whether it's their physical health, their mental health, just to learn self-defense, just to learn the sport, whatever it is, they're usually trying to improve themselves day to day. So that's the mindset, I think, overall that you need to come into it is, okay, I'm here to work on myself, and that's going to help my partner eventually too. And there's going to be days where you're helping your partner more than you're helping yourself, but it's just kind of that balance.
Yeah, you speak about a balance. I know you've been doing a lot of lifting lately. Is that a new passion along with jiu-jitsu, or you see that going a little bit further?
So I've always kind of lifted, like once I got into college and did track and cross country in college, we were required to lift. So that was kind of like my first like real introduction to actually all of that. But then once I actually got with my husband, like I said, I kind of had to stop running, and you could still lift while you were pregnant, as long as you had kettlebells, nothing hit your belly, all that. So I actually did compete in a powerlifting meet 7 or 8 years ago now. While I was 4 months pregnant, and I loved it. And it's actually a really similar energy to jiu-jitsu tournaments. That same, everyone's there to support you, and like, the shouting from the sidelines, it's great. And we just kind of, like, I kind of fizzled out, honestly, at the end of last year after all the tournaments, after ranking where I did worldwide, and then not, I wasn't the national champion. I got runner-up to a nasty, nasty triangle. But I was just kind of fizzled out. And so like I've been taking it slow in jiu-jitsu, and then finding, okay, I can still compete in something without it having to be that battle right away. And now that I've actually been away from the battle, I'm like, oh, I want to go back. I want to go back. So it's right now I'm focused on the lifting, because when you do those heavy deadlift, those heavy squat days, you can't go train afterwards. Like it's not worth the injury at the end of the day. But I can still find a little bit of balance going to, like, I spend a lot more time now in the fundamentals classes or rolling with newer people who want to learn versus like rolling with someone who's in there for competition.
Yeah. With that, where do you find that balance? Like this day I'm going to lift, this day I'm going to train jiu-jitsu. Does that all play off of the day that you're having with the family, or any other things that you have going on? It
does. So I don't like lift every single day. I usually plan 4 to 5 day weeks, just so that I always have those 2 to 3 rest days. And I always, will usually start my weeks Monday to Sunday. But say like Monday, man, my depression is not happening. Likely I'm not going to be able to get that like fire to go do like a super heavy squat, but I may have the energy to go hop into a GB1 class and train with a couple of the ladies, or go and assist professor, anything like that. And so, maybe I would push the lifting to the next day and just swap my rest days. So I kind of find, okay, how am I feeling that day when I wake up, as well as like, am I eating enough? Because when you're powerlifting and you're hitting that huge lift for like a single or 2 reps, like you have to have eaten that day. You can't get away with, like, you may be able to get away with a jiu-jitsu class with like, maybe I didn't eat enough, and you can, worry about eating after. You can't with powerlifting. So I have to make sure that I've eaten enough that day, and that I actually have the appropriate amount of caffeine, especially. But yeah.
You'll be vomiting if you do not eat.
I'll be passing out is what'll happen. I even have a couple videos recently where I'm hitting some heavy doubles, and I make sure I have my husband out there with me so that I don't just fall over and pass out. He's there to make sure that I'm like, okay, now you can continue with the rest of your workout. And I do the same thing for him too. But
where does your detail come from? Jiu-jitsu, obviously I know you as a coach, and you explain things the best way that everyone can understand it. And then I see you on Instagram explaining the techniques that you use while you're lifting. Have you always been like that? Want to give every detail and be precise in what you were saying?
Yes, I'm definitely a little bit of a perfectionist in that kind of sense. And I think when it comes to fitness or jiu-jitsu world, you can just automatically assume that you don't know everything. And there's always something to learn from someone else, whether it's a different cue or anything. And like from coaching especially, jiu-jitsu, there's so many variable, like, I could teach you the scissor sweep, but there's a couple different ways to do it, and every professor or every instructor is going to teach it a slightly different way. And there's some cues that, like, in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, that totally makes sense. Like, for example, cross collar chokes. Man, I have never hit one in a competition. I've never actually choked someone out with one because it's one of those things that just never clicked in my head. But then, you know, a few months ago, I went to Utah and trained with a different professor, and he gave me a cue that I'm like, oh my gosh, like suddenly I could actually hit a cross collar, and it actually worked. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I like to find, you know, the big cues that stand out to me, because, like, yeah, for 4 years, cross collar made zero sense. I could never actually hit it. I could teach it, you know, and people would understand it. Other people would hit it. But, like, there's going to be that one cue with that one instructor, and you're like, oh, this totally makes so much more sense in how to actually hit this technique. So I like to try to add in as much as I can from everyone that I've learned from. That's why I like to go, like, kind of school hopping and, like, okay, what can I learn from Professor Dan versus Professor Rodrigo versus Zuza versus, you know, whoever. Like, everyone's going to have a slightly different detail to, like, make my technique better and then make everyone else's techniques better when I'm teaching that technique.
When you went to Utah, were you in Park City or?
We were in Park City, so it was before Zuza had opened up his Orem
okay,
school. We went to a couple of the comp nets last year. So while he was still at Park City with the other professor.
Mina, what about you? Do you get out and travel and train?
Whenever, like, I got to train at a couple different schools in Brazil, which was awesome.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe we didn't bring that up.
It was so cool. So the first time I was there, it was tough because it was my first time in Brazil. We're in this beach town in the outskirts of Rio. It's called Arraial do Cabo, and we're on vacation. We're at the beach all day. So most of the training I did was hungover, but still awesome. Still got, like, the tar smashed out of me. And then when I went to this last time in September, I went to the school, Professor Draculino's school, Gracie Baja BH. And I wasn't even hungover, and I got the living shit beat out of me. She's a black belt now, but we were both brown belts at the time. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know how, but I need to find a way to get this girl to the U.S. because I want to train with her in May every day. She was incredible. She made me feel like a white belt again. And, like, I was so excited because I thought, I want to be at that intensity. It was so cool. I mean, during the time, it was horrible. I'm pretty sure my neck went, like, all the way around with her shoulder pressure, but it was so cool. And just training at that school, because that school is known for being, like, the school.
The Mecca?
The Mecca, yeah, for all of, like, the major competitors from Belo Horizonte. That school. So, Professor Draculino, if you're watching this, that school was awesome.
I want him too. So
yeah.
If you have any contacts, reach out to him. I want him.
I got you. Yeah.
All right.
Got you. I'll see what I can do. See what Mama can do.
right. So I do want to thank you guys for being here today. Like I mentioned in the beginning, there was huge significance of why I wanted you two here. You guys are smart, badasses, but you guys really just gave me my first experience in jiu-jitsu, and I'm grateful for that. You being my first coach that I underestimated, and you being my first female that I rode with, underestimated. But thank you guys for being here. Just read off something for our sponsors.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
You're welcome. LM Development, Quality Carpentry, Integrated Builder, Knowledge. They are a family-owned residential and commercial family company specializing in custom homes. 25 years plus experience. You can reach them on Facebook and IG at LM Development. Also, this episode was actually brought to us by Rolling Rhino Design Company. Rolling Rhino Design was founded on the basis of speaking soft, rolling hard, and celebrating hard work. We do have a treat today. The owner, Aris, is here to tell us a lot more about Rolling Rhino Design.
Well, just one of them. My husband's definitely the creative. I'm just the back end, making sure it all works correctly.
Your husband never texts me back, so
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to you.
Well, yeah. So we go with the ethos. Yeah, speak soft, roll hard. That's once again coming back to like the humility of like, okay, lose the ego on the mat because it's not going to do you any good. And what we're focusing on is more like the designs and kind of going past the cliche of like the skull and the flames that you kind of see everywhere we want to make like classier jiu-jitsu or classier lifting like lifestyle wear. So I'm actually wearing one of our designs right now. It's a mandala with, it has like plates and kettlebells, so kind of like that lifting universe. And then even Mina actually has one of our other designs. That's our first jiu-jitsu design. It speaks soft, roll hard.
She
she's
may
got
not make it out of the studio with that shit.
she's got her fingers taped up.
Yeah.
She's in her gi. She's ready to go. So yeah, we want to focus on embracing the work, celebrating strength, and staying humble on the mats in the gym, everywhere else. So our website is rollingrhino.com, and it's RYNO. Oh, rollingrhino.design. I'm sorry, my brain is obviously not here. .design, but it's spelled RYNO. And roll with style. Today we actually have a special code though for anyone who listens to this podcast. So when you're going to check out, use code BTM Pod, and you'll get 10% off your first order.
Awesome.
So
awesome.
Wish I would have known that last night. Sorry. No, I'm kidding.
Congratulations on the company. I look forward. I believe you and Ryan are some very talented people. Just not sure who plays the bigger role, but it's going to be you since you communicate the best.
Thank you, appreciate it. And congrats on starting your podcast.
Thank you
It's
so
really
much.
cool to be here and to actually see all this in the studio.
Thank you so much. Mina, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is so cool.
Was it?
Yeah.
I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I really was dead set on having you two guys here, and you guys did not disappoint. Maybe we'll get into the mats again. Maybe it'll be a little bit different outcome. All right.
Good luck. No, I'm kidding.
right.
It for sure will be a different outcome, I bet.
Well, I don't know. So thank you guys for being here today. And with that,